Chapter 3 of Somme Battle Stories by Alec John Dawson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3 The Morale of the Boche. Yes, I think you may take it, Master Bosch will never again set foot on the ground we have won from him this month, and I think he knows it. But although it's mighty hard to get, the ground we've got from him is the least of the things we've taken from the German army, as I see it. The main gain is in the changes wrought in the two armies, the Huns and ours, since July 1st. And that you can't reckon in figures. Begad, there aren't any figures big enough for the reckoning. These were the words of Lieutenant Colonel Blank, commanding officer of the ____, spoken just before he landed from one of the hospital ships. His wound, one is glad to say, is a slight one, affecting one hand only, and this gallant officer himself regarded with some irritability the action of the medical authorities in separating him from his unit at all at the present time. I asked for a dressing, and they insist on giving me a trip to Blighty. However, thank goodness I can trust my second in command, and I shall be back with my battalion before very many days are over. A wounded captain from another battalion was sitting beside us in the companionway, and nodded thoughtfully over the colonel's reference to those of our recent gains which cannot be measured in villages or in thousands of yards. "Yes," said the captain, "it's the blow to the Boche morale that counts more than the ground." "Morale. It's one of those words that people are constantly using," said the colonel. "I wonder if the general public have any very clear idea what it covers. They use so many words now which don't really give 'em pictures, and words that don't convey pictures to the average mind aren't very informing, you know, really. When I've been home on leave, I've found all sorts of people talking glibly of dugouts, fire trenches, barrages, consolidation, and so on, with never a hint of a picture in their minds of what the words really stand for. Fighting's a pretty queer business, you know, when you come to think it out, especially this sort of tornado of fighting we get now, and for 20th century man, lots of whom never had so much as a shotgun in their hands till a year ago. It's more of a miracle than people at home will ever understand, is the new army. And one of the most miraculous things about it is that at the present moment it is carrying on fighting of a kind vastly more terrible than any that the world has ever seen before, and mark you, carrying it on with as fine a steadiness, with as much stubbornness and as much dash too, as any veteran army known to history has ever shown. And if that isn't something of a miracle, well, you ask any commanding officer with more than 10 years' service behind him. This business of fighting continuously and cheerily in the presence of devastating casualties, has a good deal in common with swimming and bicycling and things of that sort, in which instinct plays a big part. Horse riding, too. Anything that demands perfectly smooth coordination of thoughts, nerves, muscles, and spirit. The material supplies are essential, and in the fighting we've got before us now, any failure in the material supplies must mean complete and most bloody failure all along the line. But there are other essentials, too. Every experienced leader of soldiers knows it. Aye, and prays over it, if he happens to be that sort. But I suppose nobody can describe it, define it, I should say." The colonel and the captain were clearly thinking hard in this odd interlude in their journey from shell-swept trenches to quiet English hospitals. They nodded occasionally one to another, as two men who perfectly understood the matter at hand, and entirely agreed that it could not be explained. Your staff arrangements may be perfect and your material all there, you know, but if the other thing is missing, or weak, wrong in any way, well, the fighting doesn't come off. That's all there is about it. You can't measure it or weigh it up any more than you can measure a cool breeze on a sultry day, but you can feel it rippling through the ranks just as clearly as you can feel the little breeze. And God help you if you feel the absence or the failure of it, because in fighting there can be no success without it. But we've never been without it for a moment in this push." The captain nodded, slowly and emphatically, beating time and underlining his assent with his cigarette. "I tell you this new army's got it, for keeps," continued the colonel. "If you start thinking about the balance and steering of a bicycle, you're going to run into the curb or something, if you start thinking. But if you know, hand and mind and nerves all one, why, she goes like a charm. Fighting's rather like that, plus heat and anger and din and fury and fight, you know. I've been in this show since it began, since the morning of the first, you know. Our chaps have remained much the same all through, except for one thing. At the outset they had duty in their minds, doing their bit, you know, their job. Now they've got victory in their blood. They've got to real grips with the Bosch. They've found he can fight all right. They've seen he's got to. And they've found he's splendidly equipped. But they found something else. They found they can beat him. They found they're just as well supplied and backed up, and a bit better. And above all, they found that when it comes to actual grips, knee-to-knee work, they can beat the Boche every time. They found they are better men and in better heart. Which they certainly are. That's the only change so far as they're concerned. That's the advance they've made, and I can tell you it's a mighty big one, bigger than anything you'll measure in kilometers. But it's not so big as the other part of the advance they've made. They've accounted for hundreds of thousands of Boches, killed, wounded, and prisoners. But they've done more, far more. They've hit every single Boche soldier the German High Command have put up against 'em, and hit 'em very hard and very much where he lives. And for aught I know, they've hit every other German, every Hun that lives, whether he's in uniform or not." "By God, they have!" interposed the laconic captain, with several emphatic nods. "Double-edged business, you see," continued the colonel. "For every ounce of morale you gain, you take at least one from the enemy." £1, sir. At Mametz, anyway," said the captain. "Well, maybe £1. My point's this. The Hun, poor devil, has been very carefully taught. The Boches are regular artists at propaganda. He's been taught, ever since he scratched into the lines we've taken between Thripoval and Combals, that the very most the contemptible English could ever do would be to hold their line, to sit still until such time as the All-Highest was ready to give the word to sweep them into the sea. Offensive movement was quite impossible for these make-believe soldiers of ours. We were all shopkeepers who did not know one end of a rifle from another, and too soft anyhow to stand up for a moment against real live Huns, once the Hun had made up his mind to move. We were cruel, cowardly devils who would torture and kill any worthy German who was misguided enough to fall into our hands. But we were not soldiers. Our soldiers had all been killed by the valiant German army in the very beginning of the war, and a real offensive was utterly impossible for us. I've talked to lots of prisoners, and I assure you that's the sort of thing they've all been taught, and that's what they believed. I tell you, it would have been better for Germany today if her leaders had told fewer damned lies in the past, better in 1,000 ways. It would have been a deal better for the Hun today if they'd taught their soldiers that the British Army was their most deadly and formidable enemy. They're beginning to see it now. Too late. Their organization is so complete, their subjection of their people so brutally thorough, and, mark you, their teaching of their soldiers is so good, that they'll go on fighting automatically, whatever happens, and they are perfectly equipped. The materiel is all there, the most formidable fighting machinery in the world is there. But the indefinable something, the thing that enables you to balance and steer your bicycle so easily and naturally without thought, the spirit you want to feel rippling through your ranks like a cool breeze, if you are to win, they've lost that, and we've got it for keeps. People who try to measure the importance of the push by the ground gained, or even by the casualties inflicted, will fall a long way short in their estimate of what it all means. The object in war is the destruction of the enemy, and the most important asset enemy has is his spirit, the morale of his troops. Since July 1st, our new army has inflicted a crushing blow upon the enemy's morale. With the same troops the Boche can never again achieve the same ends. With the same troops on our side we can achieve greater ends. It's partly the successful bravery and dash, and the stubborn endurance of our troops, and the tremendous weight of our munitions that have so reduced the Boche morale on the Somme, and it's partly what the Boche himself has done in the matter of long and careful teaching based on lies. Our chaps have let in the light of a little truth into the Huns' lines. It would have done 'em no harm if they'd been fed on truth, but they've been fed on lies, and the new diet's upset their digestion. In my opinion, what's been accomplished this month would have been a big gain to the Allies if our casualties had been 5 times what they have been. Napoleon may have been right when he said an army marched on its stomach, but believe me, a modern, educated 20th century army fights on its nerves and spirit, and that's where we are immeasurably ahead of the Boche, and a long way ahead of our position of even last June. End of chapter 3.